So I'm really thrilled that Julie Gill joins us today. I think this is something that maybe a lot of people are not aware of that's happening out there, and I think it's something that crosses our path a lot. So Julie's a family mediator, parenting coordinator, and coach arbitrator, but she specializes in separation and divorce as well as elder wills and estate mediation. Julie's one of the few advanced certified elder mediators in Canada, as well as an accredited family mediator. She also teaches the elder mediation program at Humber Polytechnic and is a member of the Durham Elder Abuse Network and past chair of FDRP. So I'm going to let Julie take it away and tell us all about this area.
Why, thank you, Linda. Can I just check on the timing for today? So, because I could talk about
You're
this till
yeah,
tomorrow.
you're good until 2:15.
Okay. So, and I want to make sure that there is enough time for questions. If you've got them during the presentation, please put them in the chat. Is the chat open, Linda, as I say that?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm happy to answer questions during the chat, and I have some time after this. The idea today, first, thank you for letting me come and talk to you. I think Linda and I have known each other for years, but I think it was the presentation that Nick Esterbauer and I did in 2024 at the Family Peacemakers. I always want to say peacekeepers, but Family Peacemakers Conference. And it was kind of about being innovative with approaches to family estate disputes, right? So it's really the whole premise of this is kind of understanding that the legal issues that were coming up on the estate side and estate and related went well beyond legal issues, and that the work that was being done by collaborative professionals with OACP and the financial professionals and the mediators with OAFM, that there was all this really good work being done with families, and how could we start to see the estate world more like family disputes and prevention and managing them as families versus being seen as civil. So we had a whole presentation about that. And it was just kind of acknowledging all the work that we do in separation divorce and understanding how big that can be and what exposure we can get to different areas to help with families. So that's kind of the tour I'm taking you on today. Um, Linda shared most of this. So, I mean, in a nutshell, what it really means is I'm a dispute resolution and prevention specialist. This is all I do. All I do is some kind of dispute prevention and mediation all day, every day. I've been doing it since 2009 when I started my practice. Um, I'm a recovering CDFA. So when I talk about financial professionals, I believe I used to be one. When they pulled out of Canada, I let that go. But I still have the training and I still do it, but I do it more from a coaching perspective. And I let you as financial professionals do the real work and do the analysis. So I stepped away from doing that. I was a chair of FDRP, which was wonderful. I'm trained in restorative, in wills and estates. I have tons of separation and divorce training, and I'm also a part-time adjudicator with Social Benefits Tribunal. So I created the program at Humber that I teach now, the Intro to Elder Mediation. So it's just kind of like every place I can kind of get in and talk to people and get people hopefully to see things through a different lens is really what I'm looking for. I'm all about innovation and change and people expanding and developing their skills so that we can do more than what people have traditionally thought we could do. And I think for you guys here today, that's something specifically I want to get into, right? So today's tour will really highlight the support and the education and the clients really need during transitions, right? So when I look at the mandate, it is not specifically separation divorce. Your work does not start and end with separation divorce, right? People have many more transitions in their lives and need much more support, so it's really about creating that holistic view of the support that you can offer, and developing those relationships, right? That really last a lifetime, which I know you know, but I'm hoping to talk to you today about looking at it a different way. Okay. So the itinerary for today, we're going on a journey. We're going on a tour that kind of starts with the ideal scenario where you get people early and you kind of work with them through their whole life cycle. So you've got them from, coming out of school and cohabitating and perhaps like, getting married and that early stage all the way through to estate disputes, right? And you have for sure the financial training to do this. It's do you have different skill sets that you can use that you've developed from separation divorce stuff that you can use in these areas, right? And I think that's really important to just look at it again from a different perspective, but again, all families, right? So, why are these the stops that I've decided to highlight on this tour? There's similarities between them all, especially from a financial perspective and a family perspective. Families don't go, oh, I have this dispute, I need to do this. Like to them, it's just something that's happening. It's just a transition and they want support from anybody they can get. So being that trusted resource, which you guys are often, guys, gals, you guys are often that front line. You're one of those first calls. You're one of those first interactions when something big. And if you aren't, that's where I would like you to be, right? We want people that have this knowledge and have these sensitivities and this empathy to be people that can refer out, that can support these families and make sure that clients feel empowered to make decisions, specifically financial decisions during transitions, right? And these things cross generations. So they are not just something that happens for separation divorce in people's 30s or 40s or 20s. We have separating divorcing clients in their 80s, right? And we have everything runs the gamut of everything. So that's kind of why I've highlighted these areas today. And the biggest, there's stops along the way for your clients, right? So if we're understanding what, instead of what I can do for you as a client, because I know what my profession is, I know what my capabilities are, it's here's what you might need. And here's why you might need that. And here's how I can help, right? So it really is flipping everything and making it like that client perspective, right? And again, while you're here today, because you have a designation that has the word divorce in it, you have many more foundational skills that we can develop that can help families as a trusted resource in many different areas. So whether you're interested or not, there are certain things I'm sure outside of separation divorce that you will be interested in that we talk about today. Okay. So part of the fact that because of this designation that you have, I know, that numbers are more about, they're more than just numbers. They're not they're not the numbers on the spreadsheet. They're not the numbers on the NFP. For us, they are, and sometimes we just talk about them very quickly and we'll use acronyms and we assume our clients are kind of catching up to how fast sometimes we speak about these financials. But if you look at all of the different stops in the itinerary today, they're all they're all similar in this way, right? So if we're coming at this from a perspective that we know numbers provide stability and safety, right? The fact that I have numbers, the fact that I have savings, or I have assets, or I have property, or I have some of the stuff, or I don't have some of this stuff, leads me to feel as a client safe and stable, or creates a sense of uncertainty, right? You know that based on this work that you do. That goes all the way through to the estate side, right? It doesn't change. Your understanding does not change, right? That numbers can assign power and influence. That we start talking about screening and abuse and power imbalances and undue influence, not just influence. Numbers can create a picture for us that highlights these things. And we know that because of the work that we do, right? Numbers can be judged. How are you in so much debt? How have you worked your whole life and have nothing to show for it? How do you rent and not own a home? How do you have no RESP savings? Right? We know they are judged constantly, and it's being empathetic and having those, really effective communication skills that we can de-escalate some of the way they're presented, and empower clients with what they are instead of what they aren't, right? What their numbers show. They're vulnerable. They create a vulnerability. People don't like to talk about numbers. They do not like to talk about finances. We get judged. We get a bad reputation as being number people. Lots of people are not number people. Lots of our clients will not be number people. So it's understanding when they're talking to us about this or we're talking to them that they're very vulnerable. Even the ones that are in a really good place because they never have enough. There's always something happening. It's that vulnerability that we're at least empathetic to in this work. that can be shared across the board, right? It shows a life lived, especially in estate stuff. Sometimes you see that in separation divorce. We have nothing to show for this. We've been together 20 years and we have nothing to show for this. And people, again, they start to feel less than. And sometimes financial professionals, legal professionals for sure, can make people feel less than. Opposing parties can make people feel less than, just strictly based on numbers. They can show fairness. When we're talking about separation and divorce, that equalization is not just a term. It is what seems fair. How can this be equal? How can this be equitable? They don't talk about how can this be equal? How can everything be 50-50, right? And the estate stuff, why would somebody get more inheritance than me? Why would somebody be chosen over me, right? How is this fair? How many times have you been asked that question? How can that possibly be fair? How can those numbers mean that? How can that happen? Right? And they're very personal and confidential, right? For us, we have to acknowledge all these things. And again, I know the work that you do, that you understand these, but when you're coming at this place, you're coming from a place of heart. Um, in all of these transitions, it will make a difference in you building that rapport and the relationships with your clients, right? So we talked about, and those are ways that you can help support them. And if we talk about client empowerment, people use, I empower my client, and we don't empower people. People need to feel empowered, right? And that means that they've got control over their own lives. They're enabled to represent themselves, to have their voice, to understand their financials, right? And make decisions based on that, not be led by it. And you will see a lot of times that empowerment and that confidence is either taken away or it's given away during transitions. So it's given over perhaps to a financial professional. It's given over to their legal counsel. It's given over to a partner. It's given over to adult children, right? So that empowerment piece, what value are we providing if we're not showing the clients that they have the ability to understand this and make decisions for themselves, that whole autonomy and self-determination that goes from with my mediation side that I think gets brought into everything, or I feel it should, right? So for you, it's about looking for new ways that you can support somebody taking control and responsibility for themselves, not telling them what to do. And some of your role will be providing advice, of course, but it's how are you providing that advice? And can it allow them to take control and make decisions? Right? So here's the advantage of working with you. Literally, this should be the advantage of working with a financial professional during any of these transitions. Plans can be collaboratively, easy for me to say, creative. You see separation agreements often drafted by lawyers. You will see, for sure, like prenups. If we talk about prenups, there's very rarely a financial professional involved. When I see a legal prenup comes from a lawyer. And to me, that doesn't make sense. And we'll talk about that. It's financial, as financial professionals, you can work with the tax person, you can work with a lawyer, a mediator, even both clients, you can be a neutral, and things can be done collaboratively. They're not done in silos, right? You can reality check expectations. So long as you're doing it respectfully, somebody should be in that position. Somebody should be helping to empower clients that you're saying, that's lovely that you want that. I appreciate you want this, or this is your goal. Can it happen? Do you have the financial resources to make that happen? If not, how do we get you there? If this or this or this happens, right? So that planning piece in every stage, not just in separation, right from day one all the way through to estate stuff, right? The families can work with you to develop a plan that is customized for them. It is not a cookie cutter. It is not a here, fill out this form, and I will split out this template for you. It is what works for that family. And to do that, you need to know your client, which we'll talk about later. How often do you get information working with your clients that has nothing to do with the financial job that you've been retained to do? How often do you hear things and you go, all right, not relevant to me, relevant to you. I need to do something with this. And sometimes these are really difficult conversations around money and finances, right? So having that empathy and being able to help them have those difficult conversations means you've got to have some kind of deepened sensitivities for effective communication and dispute resolution and be able to deal with these things. The joy of you guys being able to know, to understand the numbers, you can frame them in a practical way. So I work with many lawyers and they say, I got into law because I hate numbers. Great. Most of these transitions, they're working with lawyers at some capacity who have passed the job on to their clerk or their assistant to say, here, fill out your disclosure, do this, without framing these about why you need this number. Why is this number important? Where did this number come from? Why are we assigning taxes to it? Or why are there no taxes or contingent fees being applied? This, you have the ability to frame things in a practical way for clients that you don't see in other areas, right? You could be neutral or a coach. So you could be an advisory capacity working with one client, or you could work with a family as a neutral. And I know you have that capacity and you do that some will do that in collaborative work. But on the estate side, when we talk to different other financial disputes that can happen and roles you can have, I don't mean as a witness. I don't mean as writing a report. I mean participating in mediations and the collaborative practice in a much more active way than it has been done in the past. And I think that's a brilliant place for you guys to be. You can create the prevention strategies. So help people, since the joy of us knowing about the separation stuff is to say, well, I know things that should be in your cohab or your prenup because if this were to happen, this will set you up for success later. If this were to happen on the estate side, I know, right? I've been in enough estate disputes that if you don't add this to your estate planning, we can now create another problem that you don't really want to have happen. So you get to be involved in prevention strategies, which is just so wonderful for families, as long as they know that you're there to do that. And just help people understand the future impact of decision making, right? Their financial decisions. So how often do you get people saying, I just need this now? I just need to get a mortgage. I just need to do this. I don't want to worry about anything else. I now need to get life insurance. It's very point in time. I need to get out of debt. I need to take money out of my savings. I have to pay support, whatever it is. People don't like change. They don't like talking about money. And this is often too much for people. Numbers scare people. You know this. Not you in the room. Numbers scare people, right? So breaking it down and understanding if I make this decision today, how could it impact me? I can still make that decision. I have capacity, I have the ability to make bad decisions as well as good ones. But if without understanding, am I even being able to make an informed decision? So, how are you helping educate your clients so that they make informed decisions? So, we'll start our little tour, and these are all our stops, and these are all the pins that you can put in your practice if you haven't already, or maybe look at it from a different point of view. So we've got kind of a group together cohabitation and prenup, knowing fine well that, I started off with get them early. But knowing people like myself get into second relationships later in life and you don't need to be 19 to be planning a wedding. But there is that hope that if you start with your clients younger, right? That you get in there, that there's a lot more work and education that you can do with them. Building that rapport in the relationship is just that much stronger the earlier you get them. And the earlier you get them, um, you could use the power of the parents, right? So the relationship with the parents, because I've always said to my kids, I have 4 kids in between 25 and 29. And I'm always like, you need a cohab agreement. You've got to do this. We don't have anything. We don't care. We don't have the money. I'm thinking, I know the importance of this. I will pay. I will support this process. I will pay for this process, but I want you to get it done. Right. So sometimes it's building on that relationship you have with the parents to say, do you know I can do this for your children? Do you know we can be involved in this conversation and I can refer you out to the right people? And some of the cohab and the prenup stuff, it's fun work. Use the same skills that you're using in separation and divorce, but it's much more fun. These people are happy about getting into a relationship versus some of our clients are happy getting out of a relationship, but different story. Right. Getting them early, I think, is important. And it's how do you do that? And I think this is an amazing way, especially with your separation and divorce information and your education, your skills, right? What if? I know you're never planning to leave each other, but I know this is for life. What if? What if? Here's the thing I always say, I see the bad side. I know you don't understand, you may not understand why I'm asking this question, but I kind of see the worst of the worst. So why don't you just plan for it now when you're getting along and we got to process if anything happens. You don't need it, stick it in a drawer. You've at least considered it, right? So I think this is really important. And this goes directly to my drafting net family property statements. I don't know how many prenups I see with they get best financial disclosure. If you are going to do a proper cohab or a proper prenup, right? I want my clients to do net family property statements. I want them to disclose. I want them to disclose what they have now. People don't like talking about their debt. The assets are fine. They're usually quite proud of what they've achieved, but not the debt that they're in. But I think it's very hard to not have these conversations, and too many people don't. So that net family property is here's your point in time. Again, God forbid you ever separate. We have something that most of our clients cannot get, right? We know we're not going back to the bank. They're not going to the bank for 7 years, after 7 years. We know these 20-year relationships really just kind of, they have to assume numbers and agree on numbers that they might have had at date of marriage, um, or have them excluded because they don't have any information. This is hugely valuable, right? And it can help normalize the conversations. You guys are moving in together, you have debt. Are you going to do the sharing of costs, you know, not 50-50 in some other variation so that this person can pay debt? What does that mean long term? What happens when the debt is paid? Is retirement savings important to both of you? One of you has savings, one of you doesn't, right? It's just normalizing these conversations with people as they're getting into relationships and as they're living together. So the cohab, that's beautiful that you're both buying a house together. Do you both have the same money down? What are the expectations? We know are you being gifted any money from your family? Getting the proper documentation, because we know during a separation, everything was a loan and not a gift. Everything was a loan and not a gift, was always expected to be paid back to my parents. Nope, wasn't the idea. It was a gift. They wanted us to get started. This is important, right? Your cohabitation, does it transfer in? Does it transfer over when you get married? Do you want this to continue? Right? I'm just looking quickly at I just saw some things. Okay, just about the slides. The cohab prenup conversation does not pair well with mine. Yes, I opened separationcoach.com on February 14th, which was quite funny. I'm like, why not? I actually have clients that want to mediate with me on the 14th, and I just won't allow them to do it. That's that's not right, but that is a good point. But these conversations are much more fun. They can often happen in group settings where you can't do that work with separation people. They don't want people to know their business. This kind of framing this stuff for people, webinars, get-togethers, dinner, these are really good things to market your business and the importance of this, creating this dispute prevention. And if you're there at this point, you're there when a change occurs. You've started to build that trust relationship. You've created the net family property. You've explained to them some things that may occur during their relationship where they should come back and talk to you. You're setting the stage, right? This is why I think this is so, so important and not enough work gets put into it. I think, again, to the previous slide where you can work collaboratively, lawyers draft these things without assistance from financial professionals, as well as the client not having that. And I see them contradicted. We're going to do this and we want this excluded and then we want this to follow family law. And I'm like, you've said the same, like two different things within 3 pages because they're templated. And I get clients that go, we have a prenup. During separation, we have a prenup. Great. Or during estate, there was a prenup, somebody's passed, we still have that issue. During a separation, I can say, do you understand this document? I would say 99% of the time I get no. They signed it. They didn't understand it. They had legal advice, which they were told to do. They did not get financial advice. They got legal advice, and they didn't know. I have to go back to what were your intentions when you signed this? Were your intentions to carve out what you had at date of marriage or when you got together? Or what was it to share in the increase of value of these things? What were your intentions? And we'll go back then. We'll make your separation agreement line up with what you thought you did. But there's a real big misunderstanding of why these are needed, when they're needed, and the people that should be supporting clients to do that, where I think you guys have a huge opportunity, even to start talking about estate and other planning, right? We've got post-nups. Again, when I'm working with families that they're already together, they're having some kind of dispute, something's changed in their world. One party wants to start a business. The other one goes, "Oh, I don't want to be involved in this. This is not going to create a problem for our family debt, right? A high percentage of couples are having prenups. Yep. How high? Not enough, sadly. I think the people that are now getting cohabs are people that have come out of mediation, that have come out of a process, they've come out of a separation with support that wasn't just legal, and their children, like mine, are now starting to live together. And I'm saying, I know what my experience was. I know I got myself a cohab and a prenup. This is why you should do it. So for me, it's this generation that has gone through the process and is now starting to train and create awareness for this. And I think it needs to be, it's seen as a legal thing. It's seen in the movies as somebody that hands you a prenup, right? And we're not getting married until you sign this. And that just shouldn't be what it is. So sadly, I think it's too low percentage, but that you guys have a huge opportunity to create a much larger percentage of people doing this and to work with your collaborative lawyers in creating this and your mediators. So, I mean, the prenup is something has happened. So we're fighting. It's not a therapy issue. We don't need to go to counseling. We have different values around money. This one's saving too much. This one's saving too much. This one won't let us spend any money, right? I want to go on vacation. I can't do this. I spend too much money. Like I said, the family business, I'm going to quit my family business. I would like to start a business and we want to shelter that. Um, not understanding both parties, not understanding or having the ability or the capacity to have the same understanding of money and the values. So sometimes it's, can you guys work with the couple and say, here's what the state of the union is, kind of here's what everything looks like. Here's what it looks like individually. Here's what it looks like jointly. What's the disconnect, right? And maybe it's working with one party more than the other to understand the situation they're in and why their spending habits or their saving habits are impacting the family or how they could be. And again, I always think these, draft net family property statements. So I just have like little Excel ones that I do kind of based on the 13 ones or the 13 or 13 Bs because it feels less scary to clients. And I say, look, if you can't figure out this spreadsheet, just give me it in any way, shape, or form you like, and I will help. I will help us put it in the right boxes. I'll help you put it in the spreadsheet, right? Write it down on a piece of paper, take a picture, and send it to me. Whatever you need to do, give me your numbers and we'll work through them. Um, Provide information about inheritance. So again, if you're building this relationship, it terrifies me when people get inheritance and those will and estate lawyers are not automatically referring to a financial professional. How many separation clients do you have that a year or two before the separation, knowing things weren't so great, put all their inheritance in the family home and then figured out later they can't get it back or they've got to ask for it back, not understanding the ramifications from family law, not understanding maybe there was a better way to deal with this. How does a financial professional not get invited into these conversations and referred out from lawyers? So this, if any of you are lawyers, I'm so sorry. But there is a gap. There is a disconnect that I think all of us kind of need to raise awareness of and find different ways to get in there and help families. This is one of those places. Um, lots of opportunity here and to plan for financial goals, to resolve financial differences. These are conversations you get into. I know you do. I get them. We don't agree with this. We don't agree how much we should be saving for our ESPs. We don't even agree that we should be saving for our children because I had to pay for my university. My kids have to pay for theirs. And the other parent goes, my parents paid for everything. I want our kids to be set, right? And these are conversations you get into when they disagree on their goals, right? So you got to have some dispute resolution training to get in there. Oh, well, that's good. So long as there was a course in law school. Basic finances, yeah. I agree. It's like if they've done this, people think they can do everything. Remember the big push, what was it, 15 years ago? Everybody that was on social media became a digital marketing expert. You're kind of seeing that now with a lot of lawyers, some mediators, but you see them kind of really scope creep in areas that they potentially should not be in. I will answer that question. I actually have a program coming up, but there's lots of places I can talk about training. Trial separation. How many of you talk about trial separations and that option with your clients when they come to you about a separation? So this is an area that, again, I do a lot of work in because it's a huge decision. It's a huge decision for people to separate. And I think you guys get brought in too late in the process on the separation side. But if you're that trusted professional from early on, you're getting referred out earlier, you get to start to set the stage. Is this what you want? Are we going to work with both of you? Can I continue to work with both of you? What does this look like? Right? So a trial separation is, we're not sure we want to do this. We're not sure about divorce. We are not getting along. We need space from each other to make this monumental decision. And it tends to be one's moving out. So immediately we know we have to protect children, right? We got to protect, what does this mean if one person's going to move out? Is there a parenting plan in place? We're going to put those pieces together. What does it mean financially? If you move out, are you going to jointly share the cost of the new apartment? Is that just part of this process? It's part of a family cost to figure out if you can stay together, right? Are you going to say, I'm going to take on all the expenses for the home, but if we decide to separate, I want that marked. I want that adjusted. I'm not going to increase the value of an asset that you're not sharing. Legal or not, it's what are their wishes and intentions? How are they going to share the costs for the kids? What does that look like? Are we going to have all the costs go into the shared home? Do we need to put child and spousal support in place, even on an interim basis? What are your expectations? Is it just that that you need space truly to make this decision? So you want to make sure that you're doing this in an empathetic way and helping them have conversations and set expectations and a shared goal, right? So it's not they're just separating because somebody doesn't want to raise the issue right now and wants 6 months to get away from the other person. It is truly, we need to figure this out. They need joint goals. It can't be you're going to move there with the kids and I'm not going to hear from you for 3 months, right? How are you guys going to communicate? How are you going to pay bills? What are the expectations? Are you going to use this if you separate as your separation date? Do you know what that means? Right? So this is the stuff that because of the work you do in separation, you can create other options for people that just seem terrified or not ready to make major decisions or truly not know, like something's happened, right? We could have an abuse charge, we can have all sorts of things happen in a family. We have health issues, we have mental health issues, we have things that just freak people out. I don't know if I can be in this relationship. And who's telling them that they have other options? Right. So the more people I can say, you know what, trial separation is a good thing as long as it's documented well. And for me, part of that documentation comes with financial support. If you get into debt, is that your debt? Can we agree that you will jointly make expenses on this account and agreed upon, and anything you do on your own visas from this date to this date will be excluded so you can do what you want? Right? Should you have insight into should you separate telephones? Like honestly, like your phone bill, because people can, if we're screening, which I'm always going to say, and we'll talk about it, I think you should always be screening. Always, always, always. If you're working with families, you're screening. If they're going to have a trial separation and there's been abuse or there's concerns about power imbalances, is one of the first things you say is, are you going to, I always say, are you all on the same family plan for your phone? Okay. Should we maybe separate those things out? Do you each need to know who the other one is texting, who you're calling, where you're at? Because there's a lot of there's a lot of information on those bills. Should we separate those out? You each pay your own, and it keeps people safe. Sometimes it's a safety issue, but these are things that people aren't asking, and I think you guys have the opportunity to do that. Do lawyers write up these trial separations? I find that they do not, that they don't mention them. More, I do it as a separation coach. I do it mostly in my mediation practice because it works really well for people. Sometimes, and also like we have divorce in our titles, right? But it's not, right? We're helping people resolve and settle separation issues. Divorce is a very different word with a very different meaning, right? Separation is scary enough. Divorce is terrifying for most people, but trial separations are also a way to de-escalate things and have people have time and space to make good financial decisions, make good parenting decisions, just make good decisions and the time to understand things, right? It is not in a month, we've got to sell the house, everybody's got to be out, and you got to figure out what to do with equalization. This is a really nice thing so long as it's managed. We have 6 months, you're going to go to therapy. So there's a little bit of the stuff that isn't financial related. But again, that's where this collaboration works great. Financial, right? Financial professionals and mediators and coaches, we can do a really good job of working with clients because they're not all legal issues. And we know they're not all legal issues, but financial issues creep into almost everything. So how are we getting you guys more and more involved in these conversations, right? Trial separation. So separation, right? You know this inside out. You know the things you're dealing with. You know them. The poor clients don't. And on top of all this other stuff, you have to explain this in a practical way and be empathetic and understand who else is playing. You have to worry about, or in theory, you should be worried about educating and making sure your client is empowered to make estate changes or understand the impact of them. Planning. What happens when you are separated but you are not divorced? What does that look like for the estate world? What do you want to have happen with your children? You're buying a new home. I have people that they buy a new home and they're like, no, I want it to go to my ex still. But nobody's ever asked them that question. Nobody said, what do you want to have happen? Well, the children are still minors. I would still like it to go to my ex, and I would like my insurance and my will to be reflective of that. Absolutely. I think that's brilliant. Insurance requirements. People do not understand insurance. I don't understand insurance. Insurance requirements, people don't understand. I separated out Great Divorce here because if you're working in this area, there's a really big difference between divorce in your 20s and 30s and divorce in your 60s and 70s when pensions are in pay. And there's more conversations about double dipping. And the only asset and the only income is the pension. It's a different beast. There's a lot more fear and uncertainty that comes up, and really a sense of this is no longer fair, where you don't see in 10-year relationships, you will see in 50-year relationships. It's a different ball game. And then you have the clients, just their needs and wants and fear, and you're hearing all of this. And you're like, I'm the financial professional. But who is supporting them through all this? And sadly, it's you. You're going to hear this. You're going to hear this information. And what kind of knowledge transfer can you do? What kind of resources do you have available to you to make sure that you're setting them up, right? So it's if your work with them doesn't start and end at separation, then how do you help your clients transition through this and set them up for other ones? So are you setting them up going, okay, I know this is too much for you now, but I'm going to check in 6 months, but I'm going to leave you with this. Here's some information about cohab. If you're thinking about living with somebody else, please talk to me before you do that. How are you kind of setting them up so that they know you're the one that they should be calling afterwards, right? Knowing they're kind of not in the mood to take it all in now, but how do you make sure that there's those touch points and they know what you can do for them, right? And they know to contact you. And what does that support look like afterwards, right? Are you talking to them about insurance and their insurance needs, about life insurance being too expensive because they've had health issues, right? Constant, right? How many times do you deal with clients that are in their 40s and 50s and they've had some kind of health issue? They just can't get insurance to cover their support obligations. And you're trying to be creative and find a way around that. Because you can't say, well, sure, legally they should have insurance to cover their obligations, but you can't tell them to do that when a term policy is $300 a month and they're just barely making their payments. Like, how are you working with them to help them understand what is needed, why it's needed, and can we come up with another way to do it, right? I think that creativity comes from you guys because I know it's not going to come from the lawyers that they're working with. Again, they're numbers. My lawyers, my family law lawyers hate numbers. My state lawyers like them a bit better, but they work way more hand in hand with financial professionals, right, on the estate side than they do on the financial side. So I think there's that comfort level that if I don't know this, I'm just going to bring in my financial professional, where I don't see those tight bonds on the family side, which is scary. So trial separations. Yeah, sometimes some are doing it. A lot of mine aren't, but that's great. And I'm glad that the ones that you're working with, Renee, are doing that because I'm not seeing a ton of it, or not as much as I would like to. So here's where kind of you start to create these opportunities that I'm here to talk about, right? So blended family. So you've got separation has probably happened. People are getting together later in life. Now you're starting again to create financial goals. So whatever their financial goals were before, now it's a whole different ballgame. Now you're back in there creating goals again and almost starting from scratch to some extent. But you build a relationship and you have the rapport with your clients. So now they're moving. Is somebody moving into their home? Are they moving into somebody else's home? Are they buying a home together? What does that look like? If they're not married, who's going to give them that information about common law and the differences between common law clients and married clients and managing those expectations? So, yes, legal, but they're not going to go to their legal professional. They're not going to go to a lawyer unless they're buying a home together. And they're going to go to a real estate lawyer that's really not going to consider this stuff. But if they're talking to their financial professional, you can at least say, I know this is an issue. Well, I can give you legal information. I can't give you legal advice, but I can tell you these are things you need to think about, right? And I have people that can work with you on that, or I can help you understand it a bit better, right? Are we sharing the children's costs? I have 3 children, you have 2 children. Are we sharing the costs in the home evenly? Do you pay for any extracurricular for your kids? Do I pay for mine? What does this all look like? Do we have enough money to do these things? What happens if you can afford to put your kids in something or take your kids on vacation and I can't? What does that look like? Are those shared costs? These are financial conversations, right? To me, these are not legal conversations. They're very practical conversations that need to happen. I think they happen well mediation and with financial professionals. Previous child support or spousal support, that disconnect between I have money to do this, why don't you? Or you don't have money to do this because you're still paying your ex. Do you ever hear that one? If you weren't paying your ex, if you fought harder to do this, if you lowered your spousal support, then we could have this life we want. Comes up a ton. Or why didn't you get support from your ex? Why am I now paying for the fact that he or she left you with nothing? Right? So interesting conversations again. So I think you can see why the training on the separation divorce side really fits in well with some of these conversations. What does financial stability look like? If you're living together, what does that look like? And then you start to see, I need to protect these assets for my children. If you're moving into my house, this is not your house, this is my children's house, right? Or you start to see people finally figuring out that they don't have to be joint with rights of survivorship. They could be joint tenants in common. You start to see people going, how do I protect my assets? So as much as we are now a blended family, there's a financial carve out for my children. There's a financial carve out for your children. And then there's things that we think we owe each other should something happen, whether it's a separation or God forbid somebody passes, right? This is where all that estate stuff gets more crazy. Do you have plans? What do your wills look like? What do they look like when they're talking about the guardianship of your children? I'm now part of their life. Do I just lose them as a step parent? Are they going to go to their other their other parent's house? And will they have, what is your expectation? Do you want them to have any relationship with me? So there's all this stuff. And then there's joint and separate budgeting. So are there joint accounts? Are they truly joint accounts? Is what's yours, mine's mine? Do you have a cohabitation agreement? Back to that, right? Back to that. Just because you're planning a family doesn't mean you're getting married. And if you are, cohab, prenup, right? Super important in this stage. Then we have, for lack of a better term, I don't think anybody else has come up with a better one. We've got that sandwich generation. That realization that your dollar now has to stretch further. You may have redirection of savings, right? People may be coming to you going, I don't know. I know my parents can't pay for this. I have to get them out of their home. They need PSW. They need care, but I'm still trying to save or put my kid through university, right? Or we've just spent all our savings on our kid going to university. I don't know how to come up with this money and not impact my financial life. What should I do? What can I do? So these questions start, right? Start analyzing. You start to see people analyzing the cost of caregiving, right? Having somebody come into the home, somebody working part-time to now care for an older adult. You start to see another huge financial transition, or at least the thoughts of it, the beginning stages of one. the co-living arrangements. Should we move my parents in? Should we move my parents? Should we buy a bigger home? Should we build a home? Should we renovate our home to move a parent in because they need help? And then you get into the family conversation of, is that pre-inheritance? Does that money just go to you? Shouldn't that be shared equally with us after mom or dad passes? Creates a whole other ballgame, right? But this is when this stuff starts to happen and we need the financial support, right? There's now a little bit more consideration of estate planning needs because they're seeing what their parents have, right? Not them, they themselves want to do this yet, but they're like, huh, does mom or dad have a will? If they have powers of attorney, what do they say? What does it entitle me to do? And it's never, what are my obligations? It's what does this entitle me to do if I'm power of attorney? What can I do for them? Um, and they start to realize the importance of this because I think before this stage, it's just a will. Estate planning is a will. Period. End of discussion. Nobody's thinking about it. They have one or they don't. Last year, Nick had a stat, and he said more than half of Canadians don't have a will or leave estate plans inconsistent with family expectations, legal and moral obligations. Over 50% of Canadians. Terrifying, right? So you think now you start, and you see people envisioning inheritance. Well, I'm a little bit of debt right now, but mom's not doing well, and I know I'm getting an inheritance. And you start seeing people spend money that they don't have, or in separation divorce. Well, they're going to get a big inheritance in a couple of years. So we really shouldn't equalize, or I should have more support, or we should do more of this. Right? Because I know I'm getting inheritance, and somehow that should play in. Oh, I use PSW, personal support worker. I'm sorry. Did I miss another question? They're working together. Yeah. Oh, thank you, Terry. So this is where you guys can really have an impact. Like from the divorce stuff in that and the estate stuff not being a marketing niche, but really here's the value I can bring to this process, right? Here's the things that you don't know and nobody's going to tell you. Incapacity planning. And I've separated that out from estate planning. This is where you start, the rubber meets the road. This is where you start to see that crossover between legal, financial, emotional, interesting family dynamics, family conversations. Then you get these questions, and I'm sure you get these questions because I know people aren't asking their lawyers because they don't have that relationship. They're asking Google, I would guess. They're asking friends. Do I need a will? Goodness, you see that all the time. Do I need a will? Will I have enough money to live until 95? Because now that's a reality. What if I can't care for myself? It's not that they're necessarily completely wanting the answers or want to action the answers. But my question is, who are they asking these questions to? I think it should be you guys. I think it should be financial professionals that play this role and go, hey, I can give you some information based on that trusted relationship. We can now do this. But then you start to see people kind of plan for themselves. Well, I put somebody else on. I put my kid on an account with me. We've made this account joint in case I can't do something or I need them to do something. Scary, whole other conversation. Real property, yes, the cottage. We're going to do this weird thing with the cottage, and here's how we're going to take care of the cottage. And I want the whole family. I want it to stay in the family. And people start they start to share what their wishes are. And they think they're planning for that, but all they're really doing is sharing what their wishes are with people and hoping somebody will listen. They're not really at the documenting stage, but they're at the I should start to figure out what would happen if it was me stage. And then it's which decisions are personal, which ones are financial, how do they intersect? And again, back to that wishes, intentions, and goals, right? So at least people are thinking about this. They're trying to action it on their own, not necessarily equating this with estate planning, which we know is more than wills. And we've got powers of attorney. So they're not at that stage yet. They're ahead of there, but a great time to really work with them and have them understand your value, right? So if we've got the gathering and maintaining of documents, I don't know how many people like that old piece of paper in a shoebox. I still have clients that do that, right? If it's not a shoebox, it's a big folder and they're like, I put everything in here. Figure it out. or haven't done my taxes in how many years, right? People don't like to gather and maintain documents, I find. And it's even worse when it's this. So, as my dad says, he just turned 85 last week. That's not my problem. I won't be here. It will be your problem, he says. Like, great. And I will tell you that he's one of those people that I just got him to do a will at 76. Because he honestly believed if you created a will, you would die. So it was bad form to talk about it. If you talk about death, then we had a lovely conversation one day with the wishes and intentions. And I tell people this all the time, you know, you have to ask the questions. You have to kind of normalize some of these conversations. And my mother has always been very clear about her burials and her wishes. And I was like, right. So one day off the cuff, I went, right, two cremations coming up. Got it. I know the plan. And my dad like pissed off, walked out of the room, slammed the door, and I was like, what was that about? I'd never asked him. He'd never mentioned anything to me. No, wants to be buried, wants a big funeral, wants, the bagpipes, wants the whole thing. We didn't talk about it as a family. Based on what I do, we didn't talk about it as a family. I didn't even know that extent. So can you imagine? You think he's got any documents prepared for me? Do you think he has much of a plan and I'm going to have any idea? No, because not silent generation, but really close to it. They're not, his money is his money and nobody needs to know about what he's doing with it. He will feel judged. He will feel vulnerable. We get to deal with that still on estate planning. So gathering and maintaining documents, difficult. Providing for beneficiaries, you will see older adults specifically saying, I don't want to spend this money. I don't want to get hearing aids. I don't want to buy a new iPad. I don't want to do these things because I want to leave my money for my now adult children who are financially stable and fine and don't want your money, but would like you to have a good life. Or you have providing for minor beneficiaries with disabilities. Tax efficiency scares me because I'm always like, at what cost? This drive about to avoid probate is just there's a ridiculous amount of misinformation and it scares me and people don't understand what they're doing, not financial professionals, people in general. And what they're doing just creates more problems. You're working with anybody in this stage, whether they're starting to think about it or actually doing this planning. So not even the fact that there's a dispute or it's happened, doing this planning. There is a ridiculous amount of grief and loss, and you can't do this work without acknowledging that. And I'm talking about from separation on, right? There is the loss of autonomy. There's the what if I'm not going to be here? There's the what if this isn't my house anymore? What if I have to move into care? What if I need somebody to make decisions for me? What if my partner passes and they're the higher income earner? What happens if? There is so much grief and loss, and without understanding that, it is really difficult to do any of this work, right? Which is where I think that heart stuff comes from. When we don't work with separation. You don't get a designation of working with separation and divorcing clients unless you have that empathy in you. Or you might, you're doing it for marketing purposes only. You have to have a lot of this empathy to do this work. It's not easy work, right? Same thing on the estate side, but they're very similar skills. Right? The foundation is there for you to do the same work and not on the litigation side and not being a witness to being more collaborative in the actual process when we talk about planning and disputes, right? Education about powers of attorney. Cannot tell you, I mean, you guys probably know the misinformation that's out there about power of attorney, right? And how they don't understand when the power of attorney ceases to exist when the person dies, or they don't understand that they have a fiduciary responsibility. They don't understand their job is to make decisions for the person that has granted them this power, and not that they're just making good decisions based on what they think is right. This is this huge area that creates disputes, and I feel mostly it's a lack of education, right? I don't know who's doing the work on educating people about power of attorney. A lot of it comes from the legal perspective, and it's not easily digestible for clients, which creates some problems. And then really helping people decide who their trustee is. And to a lot of extents, that's a financial decision and a trust decision more than it is a legal one. Like, what can they do? They're going to make decisions about your assets. They're going to distribute your assets. They're going to follow your will. Is that a legal issue or is that a financial issue? Should this person have some education or knowledge about finances? Should they know who to go to? Do they understand what that role is? And are you picking the right person? You know, have you got the right stages? And are you looking at this from a practical financial perspective and not an emotional one? Like, I'm picking my older child, I'm doing this, I'm doing the son versus the daughter, and some of that's cultural too. But like how important of a decision that is, even just picking your trustee, I believe it's a financial decision, right? So why did I bring you on this lovely tour today? To hopefully have you to see some of the opportunities that I think that are out there. But it was really to show you what you bring to the table, because I think sometimes as financial professionals, you don't expand your scope enough and think, I have this designation, this is what I do with it. But this designation alone and the work you do within separation divorce can so be expanded. And the reason that's important right now are really these stats, right? So our population is getting older. We know that. It's going to peak. Yes. We have huge generational wealth transfer. Yeah. Between 1980 and 2020, our life expectancy increased by almost 7 years. So this whole, I want to live to, used to be 80, 85, is now 90, 95. Your planning looks very different, right? People are healthy longer. This is a problem. People are living in their houses longer. We don't have places to put people. There are lots of issues that are coming up. This is a growing demographic, right? And it's getting more complicated. Separation, divorce, capacity, it's making things more complicated. If you look at this, the number of will and estate cases reported in Canada just last year alone went up 20%. This is a growing field. I don't think we can leave this just up to the way that it has traditionally been done. And it's traditionally been done by mediation. There's now somewhat of a movement to mediation on the estate side, even though I think they're family disputes, they're being handled like civil disputes, which means we've got retired judges, senior litigators now doing estate mediations. It's all being done in shuttle. Nobody talks to each other. You've got a day to 3 days booked, and it's to force a settlement. It's evaluative. It's not a process. It's a point in time. You need to make a decision. And I don't think that works. And I'm not seeing enough financial professionals being brought into these discussions during the mediations, because they're being seen as really settlement conferences, right? They're being looked at very differently. So they're getting the information from you guys. So we get the reports from the CBVs, like we know, we've got the stuff from the accountants. We have what we need. You're not participating. So I don't know if the clients understand the positions they're in, because they're being led by their legal positions and not their financials or their wishes or their intentions, or even understanding the capacity of the client to understand their own financials. This is huge. There is a move. So people, firms like Hull and Hull are starting to look at how collaborative can fit into the estate world, right? So if they're going to build the collaborative process, and there's financial professionals in there, you guys as financial professionals have to have those sensitivities to work in this environment. But that's the next thing that's coming. There are now people who are pushing for collaborative and mediation, people that are pushing for mediation like me to be seen as more of a family process, right? And be longer process versus a point in time settlement. So this is where things are going. And I think you guys are in such an amazing place to expand your offerings and participate in these processes. So if we look at, the dispute resolution, I call it estates and families because it's not just a will challenge, right? And it's not elder mediation, because when I'm getting brought into these, I'm not worried about getting the family back together. Like, those relationships have been destroyed years ago. They're ingrained. Those dynamics are what they are. I'm going, this is what I got to deal with. This is what's on the table. How do we get all their voices heard, and get to a resolution and not a settlement? Right now, they're very settlement focused. And I think they need to be family resolution focused, any kind of estate and related issues, right? So it's this growing need to have a different lens and have these things looked at, these kind of cases looked at differently. So you look at, like, these are estate disputes, which are truly financial disputes, right? We're talking about jointly held assets. Did mom put you on that joint account because she wanted you to just be able to make her payments because she didn't like going online and didn't think to give you the password instead of making it joint? Or was she truly gifting that to you? Was she gifting that to you? Was she creating a trust? Was she holding it in trust for you? What was happening with this asset? These are financial discussions. I mean, they have legal implications, but they're intentions and wishes, right? They're what were you trying to do with this money? Distributing assets, people understanding how to. This distributing assets comes up all the time with the home. So when an older adult, if they've been moved prior to passing and the family home hasn't been dealt with, you have siblings that want to buy it out. You have the parent saying somewhere, to some child, I wanted it kept in the family. Well, that's great. So they're all fighting about when they're going to sell the family home and how it's going to get divided. Who's paying for the family home for the year while this happens? Right? The state doesn't have the money. Like these are all financial. Like where are we getting the money? How creative can we be in our solutions, in problem solving? Concerns of financial abuse I get brought into all the time. I think money's missing from mom or dad's account, all POA stuff, but it's financial, right? It's me looking at it going, they're valid expenses and somebody trusting me enough to do that review or go in and do kind of capacity. I have a voice of the senior report that I do, very similar to the voice of the child. So I go in and I work with the older adult and I say, do you know where your money is? Do you know where your accounts are? What do you want done with them? What are your intentions with the house? What are your intentions with this? And really make sure that they understand. They have a reasonable understanding of what's happening. Or I'm there to say, yeah, there's financial abuse. And 2 weeks ago, I had to go report it to the police, right? So we'll get brought in on a suspicion of financial abuse, which I think is great. So if we've got that screening training, I'm using all my screening, I'm using all my capacity, my understanding of capacity assessments, and putting it all together and saying, okay, how do I tell if there's financial abuse happening here? What is my obligation? How can I manage this? Right? Dependent support, equalization or inheritance. These are all areas you guys are in a perfect position to work with estate planning people, right? Or estate litigation stuff or estate disputes. Because you will see estate lawyers will tell you, yeah, I don't do equalization. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do with that. So they're going to engage somebody else anyways. If you're in this conversation, brilliant. Lack of disclosure. So not just disclosure or understanding disclosure, people that don't want to disclose or can't disclose or don't have the ability to disclose. What are you doing with that? Gifts and loans, passing of accounts, because it's such a legal process and it's usually ordered. I do informal passing of accounts. So a lot of times if I can get people into mediation because there's a concern of financial abuse or there's an allegation of somebody's doing something improper, an informal mediation saying, can we open up not the books because there's still privacy, right? Like the attorney still has to maintain the privacy of the trust, but they can go in and say, look, here's a summary of expenses that went to the home. They're very reasonable. They're very similar to what they were last year, right? So without giving up privacy, can they share enough information in a confidential setting that calms the other people down, calms the other beneficiaries, the other family members down? So I kind of call it an informal passing of accounts, but there's lots of things we can do. And this common law relationship piece, huge. The implications of people saying, I've been together with this person for X years. We were engaged. We were going to get married, but he or she passed before. Here's what I want. And you have blended families, you have family of origin, you have all sorts of, we should be sharing the value of this asset. It should not go to his children. It should go here. It should go here. It is the perfect place to play around with some of the some of the calculations that we have to do on the separation and divorce side and say, look, well, if you're divorced or if you just met or if you were cohabitating, here's kind of what it would look like. Can we frame that in this instance to make something that feels fair for people? Works 9 out of 10 times. It's just that reframing and saying, okay, well, if they were together and they lived together and they shared costs, this is maybe, do you think they added this much financial value? And you'll get the kids to go, yeah, they should get something, right? But when it looks like I should get half, cuts the conversation off, becomes a litigation without needing to. These are areas that I think you guys, again, so much potential. So briefly, the know your client, and I don't mean the mandatory KYC. I mean knowing your client. So if you're building this relationship and rapport, so screening, again, screening. I think we should be screening nonstop for power imbalances, for abuse, for capacity, and for coercive control. Have to on the separation divorce side. I think we should anytime we're working with any families. So this is doing comprehensive intakes continuously, right? And I don't mean little has anything changed. Yeah, I would like to meet with you quarterly. I mean, talking to your clients about what's happening and setting up processes that here's some things I'm going to ask you about when we meet next week. Here's some things I want to know. Because you can't just go into a meeting with people and go, anything changed? They're going to go, no. They want off that Zoom. They don't want to talk to you about it, or they won't think that it was a change that you need to know about. Right? So if you say, I'm going to ask you these questions, then you can set up your own really powerful questioning that leads you into conversations you should be having and being able to educate them. Well, here's why I asked that question, right? I don't know if we've done this or we've talked about this or you understand this, so I want to have a conversation. And I think you should always be screening, and unless we're asking the right questions, we're not doing that screening, right? Learning about your client's strengths and weaknesses. And their needs. Do they truly understand numbers? Like, do you have to show them a different way? Do you need a visual representation of something? And does one of your other clients need like a spreadsheet with, 10 tabs? How do they want information presented to them? What are their strengths and how can you work? Yes, I will mention some screening tools. Curating resources, right? So wherever you find great articles, and it doesn't need to be ones that your organization says you have to put out, right? Have you found a great blog? Have you found, you know, a lawyer that puts out really good content about something that you really like? Whatever, even a therapist. So curate resources that you can kind of link to them easily. Um, it's going to build that rapport. Provide the appropriate education again, so it's relevant to your clients and not that kind of, what do they call it? Like that kind of just burst. I'm hoping I get a bunch of people that might be interested. But like, here's some webinars where we're actually going to have a discussion about these things versus the kind of bigger marketing type events. How can you provide the appropriate education for your specific clients and the different ones you have? Referrals, strategies again, dispute resolution, prevention. So, I mean, doing that KYC stuff, but really, really doing the KYC stuff, not just doing it because you have to. Um, and I will tell you, before this career, I was an assistant vice president of Bank of Montreal and worked with advisors and the sales guys. So I know exactly what KYC stuff is and how not seriously it's taken, right? And to add to this, if you work in any of the estate related stuff, I'm going to say keep really good notes. So lawyers have a duty to kind of make sure they're screening for capacity and people understand that the decisions they're making. And I think financial professionals should have more of a duty to do that. So I've had this conversation. They very clearly were able to tell me X, Y, and Z, and they made this decision because X, we had this conversation, right? I think those are the notes that everybody should be keeping because they are coming up in estate disputes and they're going to be asked for more and more. So if you're not doing that, I would suggest that you strongly think about doing some of that work. Um, that your notes may not just be for you. And this is where you can add to what you already have, right? It's those developing those heightened sensitivities to do some of this additional work. For me, it's a deep understanding of screening. For financial abuse, even just like when we talked about earlier, are they still on the same phone plan? Huge, huge telltale, right? Do they have their own credit cards? Like all the obvious things for financial abuse, but there's so many when we delve into it that as financial professionals, we can see it, and a lawyer might not catch it, a mediator may not catch it, and you go, why? I don't understand that. Why does this person have all the assets? And I mean, some of them are really obvious, and other ones they're not. Even just hearing, I don't have access to this. I don't have a bank card. I don't have my bank card. There's certain things that you will start to pick up on, and you see it a lot in the elder side. Um, there's a ridiculous amount of financial abuse, sadly. The power imbalances, coercive control is that pattern and understanding that pattern of behaviors that is taking control away from your clients. You may see it if you're working with both clients. You may have to ask about it if it's just your client. And you're sensing, these are conversations, they're very difficult conversations to have, and you need to be prepared to have them, but you can't shy away from them. And I think there's a duty the more and more, ideally, the more and more I can bring financial professionals into this world, the more of this training and development's going to happen. This enhanced dispute resolution. So not the, I had 5 hours of dispute resolution training a year. This is kind of doing some of that work to say, what do these disputes look like? How can I help de-escalate them? When do I bring somebody in? How do I handle difficult conversations? Um, I think there's a lot of need for that in this role. Your effective communication skills, obviously you have, but specifically for people in crisis. These transitions, people feel like they're in crisis mode. There is a fight or flight with any transition, even good ones, right? Even you see people that are like, they should be, they're just married and they're having a baby. They're having their first child, and everybody's like, oh my God, this is the best time of your life. This is so brilliant. This is all exciting and positive. Meanwhile, they're like, I have to have this baby. I don't know if I want to stay home with this baby. I don't know how to do this. I don't know if we can afford this. Like, so you think of even the best transitions in people's lives come with a ton of fear, uncertainty, fight or flight, that they're in crisis. So being able to speak to them and knowing that that's where they're coming from, um, really, really important, right? Not taking that for granted where they're coming at, what they don't know, or even, you see people not having capacity to make decisions, financial decisions during a separation. Meanwhile, before the separation, they could have done it. No problem. But they're in crisis mode. They can't think, they can't see the forest for the trees, right? So understanding, again, when I say capacity, I mean medical and legal capacity, but I also mean just not having the capacity at a point in time because of a crisis, right? And knowing how to work with them during that. Demystifying the process. You guys can make numbers less scary. You can make financial disclosure so much less scary. You can make passing of accounts just a normal process that happens, and people understand why it happens and what those numbers are. That's valuable. That builds trust. You can do that. Breaking down those processes. I know this is a lot. Just do this. Do this. I'll contact you next week for the next part. Just get this one piece done. In your estate planning, your capacity planning, your separation, your cohab. Just think about this one thing, and then I'm going to ask you another question, right? You have lots of people that have mental health issues. You have ADHD. You have lots of different diagnoses that you need to deal with these people differently as well, right? In their financial planning process. That knowledge of grief and loss kind of goes with that crisis. All of these transitions come with grief and loss, including the good ones about cohab. I'm losing my apartment. I'm moving in with somebody else. I'm losing my autonomy. I now have to spend all my time with. There is still grief and loss in all of these transitions, and we can't pretend that that's not happening, right? Even as positive as we think they may be, we've got to look and say, what could the counter of this be, right? And then the disputes and causes that we're running into. And the most obvious question today is, why you? Because why not? Um, Everything that you bring to the table, right? You are a trusted resource for these people going through transitions. Why would you not be at the center of it? Why should you not be at the center of this planning and the prevention and the dispute resolution, right? You have the expertise literally to analyze these financial situations in a way nobody else has. Not a mediator, even with some, I've got some skills, not in the way I do, right? Not in the way lawyers do. You're bringing something very separate. And I know you see the value in this, but it's how do we make sure everybody else sees the value and the expansion of what that value is, right? You can support families. You understand the dynamics of families. You understand that they have goals and they're not just my client, right? Which sometimes, again, it sounds like I'm prepping on legal and I don't mean to, but their role is very specific to advocate for their one client, right? In this situation, you can come in as neutrals, you can come in as supporting families. You don't have to just specifically be that advocate. You can be, but you can also add value in a different way, right? You create the information alone that you provide creates balance. So even sometimes how you present a report, how you present the information that you've created or that you've developed, the report that you put along with it, the language that you use, how it's presented creates balance for these people, which is amazing. You can educate. You have an educational role. That's a nice role to have. You're not always stuck in the middle of chaos. You can educate people again so that they feel more empowered to make decisions. And I will say this nonstop, you are not afraid of numbers. Your clients are afraid of numbers. Lawyers are afraid of numbers. Most mediators I know are afraid of numbers. You guys can come in and make the numbers make sense, right? And give them meaning aside from the emotional meaning and value that everybody assigns to them. It's like, in a nutshell, this is all the stuff you know you bring to the table in separation divorce work, but you can do so much more if we can get people to let you in, or you change the way you look at your practice if you're interested, or sometimes even just somebody saying, you know what, like highlighting the fact that you have all this skill, right? And expand what you do with it. Um, so somebody asked me about training before, so my contact information is in the slides, but we do have a 5-hour basics of estate, elder, and trust law with Nick coming up on June 13th, which is great. So it's live, you can ask him questions and talk about things. And then I have a 2-day estate and beyond program coming up that is a lot of this deeper dives for screening and dispute resolution and the things that are coming up in all of those kind of related, estate and related issues, not specifically how to do a will challenge. It is what else is going on that we can all add some value and change the lens. So that was a lot of information, I'm sure. A lot you knew, maybe giving you something to consider that might be different than what you thought you could do with your designation. Um, and look at the questions. Does anybody have any questions, or did I miss them in coming through in the chat? Screening tools. So there are some, Elder Abuse Prevention Ontario is brilliant. I always say to go to EAPO. They have some really excellent screening tools specifically for financial abuse. Um, I have some, if you want to reach out, I can let you know. But there's a lot of work that's been done on the screening side. Carl.
I have something stuck in my teeth. My apologies. I'm eating salad. Just in case someone puts me on the big screen or something like that, and then you see something. Anyways, it's interesting because again, like what you're talking about is extremely important. But the problem is that I think even one of my comments I put in there, like, the lawyers took that one course during law school, which gives them the ability to sit there and do all the financials, and they're so knowledgeable, and then they make stupid comments on a regular basis. It's interesting because I know even within the collaborative group that I'm in, trying to get them to recognize that we don't just need to do divorces, but doing cohabitation agreements or those contracts once those new relationships build are just as important. And it's one of those interesting phenomena, and I don't understand it. Like, I'm going to pick on farmers, and I'm sorry if anyone here is a farmer. I don't understand farmers. I deal with a lot of farmers in the Chatham area, and the things that I hear just are the most mind-boggling concepts of, I'm going to own half my brother's house. My sister's going to own the other half of my brother's house. He's going to own this part of this farm. I'm going to own this part of this farm. This way we can protect each other if something should happen. And then we haven't done an evaluation since 2012. So what's, why is there an issue, Carl? Well, let's see, your property value has increased dramatically. You've kicked the tax can down for like the last, 12 years, 13 years. And, you can't avoid tax forever. But it's one of those odd situations where, when my financial practice, when I would approach lawyers, their usual go-to is, oh, well, we know that. We've dealt with that. I'm like, but have you? But have you really? So is there anyone on here that actually has success in building, and then if you have, what kind of verbiage are you using that is going to change the tide? Anybody?
Sorry,
all right, so
Carl, when you refer to building, what do you mean? Building what?
Well, a practice that revolves around also doing cohabitation agreements.
I've done many cohab agreements for clients. I've mediated them. And I can
now,
tell
they coming
you that
to you, or are you getting those from referrals from lawyers?
they're coming to me.
Okay.
They're coming to me, and we, like Julie was saying, an NFP is a critical part of everything that's done. Full disclosure, all documentation shared between the parties. We discuss everything top to bottom, future estate potential issues, you name it. We cover it all. If they're not prepared to do that, I don't do it. It's because there's just no point. But yeah, they're becoming more and more. I mean, I've been doing mediation work for 13 years. They're becoming more and more important. I think just because people are getting married later. I mean, I just helped someone in one case right now. He did not have a cohab agreement. This was just a complete shit show. They were married, and after 1 year of marriage, decided to report each other as being separated when really they weren't. They were doing it for tax purposes. It's just a complete disaster, guided by no one in particular. Transfer of assets, family assets, and it was just a complete mess. So I can see what can happen when one doesn't do what they're supposed to do the right way. But certainly cohab agreements and mediating them, it's one of the best things I think anybody can do because you know what? Once they put everything together and they know what they want and they discuss all the different issues, they've got a pretty solid marriage contract. Well, for however long it is. I mean, if they stay married 35, 40 years, will probably go out the window. But, you know, um, it's definitely a starting point. And with a lot of these clients that do already have assets, I think it's a necessity.
Yeah. And I think to your point, Carl, it's changing. It needs a paradigm shift, right? Because we continue to see scope creep on the legal side. On the mediation side, everybody's now taken a Harvard course and is now a mediator. Um, you know, they've saw their world shrink during COVID. Things changed for them, and now they're looking to expand it, which is great for them. But it's us changing it so that here's our value in doing this, right? Here's what we bring to the table, and here's why it doesn't look like what you're going to get from a lawyer. Here's how the process is different. And it really is us marketing our skills and not being afraid. We're not going to get those referrals from the lawyers. They're never going to come, right? And it's now even less so. So it's how do we change that so that, like Joanne said, like I'm getting those clients mostly directly, right? Except for the lawyers that I do want to work with that go, I really don't want this. Build those relationships, build those partnerships. Some of it is going to be like, us working together saying, we've got this and this, we're going to co-mediate this, we'll do this. And really, I think we have to change the culture because we know the gatekeepers right now. We know who they are. We know what's happening, but I don't believe it is really positive for families. And I think we can make a change, but we're all really going to have to push this. And I'm just going to keep coming and talking to people about pushing it. Eva, I know you had your hand up before, and then I want to comment on.
Yeah, thanks. I think just like in collaborative, we can position ourselves as the first point of contact. So we can either, whether it's through our websites or the work that we do or the messagings that we put out says we do, marriage contracts, so we do prenups and we build the team and we find let's say the friendlier or more lawyers to say, do you want to join my team in doing this? So rather than being beholden to them, and just as people are reaching out to a lot of us directly in terms of they're thinking about separating, they want to get some handle on their finances, it's no different on the marriage contract or the prenup side. So it's how you position yourself in doing that work. And again, you don't need a lot of other contacts to do a fair amount of this work because you'll get good, you'll build a good cohesive team, and then the whole
Yep.
team sees the value in all of that, and then we're all sort of talking in the same voice. And it comes. I've done a fair number of prenups and marriage contracts with no more than three other lawyers who just believe
Yep.
they've done it once and it makes sense, and then they're going to use me every time they want to do this or vice versa. So I think it's a two-way street in terms of where clients come from. And but I think in so many cases, they're starting with us now.
Which I'm hoping to see on the estate side too, right? Because this stuff is private. They're traditionally family issues. They don't want to be in court. They don't want to be in public court, right? Litigating. Al?
Yes, thank you. Can you define what is practicing law? I have had lawyers in my part of the world who say you're treading in a bad area. We don't want to charge you with practicing law. And I thought, well, that sounds like a lot of BS, but it's turf protection. I get it. But
I can't
could
because
you give
I'm
me
not
a
a lawyer and
definition?
I get the
Where
same
does this
threat.
where does giving advice start or end and practicing law? Where do the two join?
From a mediation perspective, it is any information that literally I can find that is publicly available, I can discuss and explain, right? When I was CDFA, I could give financial advice only for separation. They didn't cross over into investment stuff or legal. So lawyers love to say, that's not information, that's advice. I'm giving you information and I am not telling you what to do with this information. I am framing this information for you so that you, again, your client can go feel empowered to make decisions. To me, you don't have a case. I continue to keep up my professional liability insurance, of course. But I mean, 16 years doing this, and I'm a mediator that does not have a law degree. And I hear that every now and then. I'm like, well, tell me how. And they never can. It's just somehow they feel it's encroached in their information. Or it's the clients. In all honesty, there's also that clients going, well, the mediator said this, or the the financial professional said this. And you go, whoa, no, 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 no. I did not say that. That's how you interpreted it. So clearly I didn't explain it properly. That can catch you too. So sometimes if I think I'm verging on something or they haven't understood something or I'm in jeopardy, I will put it in writing and say, just to confirm, we spoke about this and this was the information I provided. You get to make your own decision, which I think is super helpful to cover my butt.
So is
Yeah.
it mostly just
sorry.
BS? Is it just positioning like Carl's
Yeah, comment?
just said?
Well, so in the room, has anybody ever been threatened by that? Everybody had that threat? Anybody actually been charged with anything? Like, I don't know anybody that has been. I truly don't. I've been doing this for 16 years. I don't know anybody on the financial side or the mediation side that has been charged with anything. That has even
No.
had a letter from the Law Society. Nothing.
I wouldn't say I've been charged, but it does go to your credibility with the professionals you're going to work with. So the lawyers who refer over, one of the things they've said to me is they know I'm going to stay in my lane. I am not going to venture in and give legal advice. I'll give general family law, separation, divorce, marriage contract information, but I'm not advising them of their rights and obligations under the law. That's the lawyer's job. So if you're not crossing over into their work, it's helpful in building the relationships to get referrals.
I'm going to suggest those lawyers that are doing coming up with those threats are not referring anyways. Right. Like, honestly, if that's you stay in my lane, I'll stay in, they're not staying in their lanes. They have never stayed in their lanes. It's not a thing. They don't have to. They don't feel they have to stay in their lanes, but everybody else does. That's a person, but they're not the people referring. They're not the people you should be worried about. They're not going to file a complaint. I've not seen any. Like anybody I know, I've never seen one. Yes, could they hurt your reputation? There's a reputation risk. Absolutely. But as far as a law society risk, I've never seen one. If anybody has, let me know.
So there's been some conversation
Great
about
idea.
having, helping people write their prenup. I would argue that is that, being being a group of friendly, helpful people, everyone from that I've met, Bettina on the West Coast and our friend in Prince Edward Island, everybody has experience and everybody shares for our client's best interest. So helping someone draft a prenup so that they can take the dot points to a lawyer to polish it up strikes me as just a good thing to do, and one shouldn't be intimidated by that.
You would
Fair
think so.
enough.
I bet
Thank you.
everybody's in agreement, Al. I certainly am.
I
And
think,
Bettina, and then I know I have to go, Linda.
yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, Bettina, you had a question?
Well, I just about those screening tools. No, I didn't have a question. Did I raise my hand?
Yeah,
Sorry.
you did.
Yes.
Oh, sorry. No, I just love everything you're saying. I just absorbing it, and Carl's comment just makes me chuckle.
Thank
Yeah,
you so much for having me today. I told you I could go on like this for tomorrow till tomorrow.
yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, I think it's been a fascinating presentation, and I think that you've probably either encouraged those that are starting to do more of this work or inspired those that haven't looked at that. I don't know that there's been as much work in the elder area within our group for sure. And I mean, to Al's concern, I think that, and it's one of the reasons I'm such a stickler for the language that you use in the reports that you do. I know that a lot of people have given me pushback on that, but I mean, you use neutral language, that you are providing information and you're not giving advice, recommendations, strategies. You're okay. These lawyers are just, they're afraid of you because they
Thank
don't
you.
know the numbers. So
Thanks,
Thank you so
Linda.
much for having me, Linda.
yeah, thanks a lot. And if anybody needs to pursue this further, they can reach out to Julie, or you may even be inspired to take her course.
Yeah, but Tina, I mean, my contact information's there, so send an email after about the
Yeah, sounds great.
screening. Thank you guys. Have a wonderful rest of the day.
Yeah, great. Bye-bye, Julie.
Bye-bye.